plus 1. So from that, we could assume that x equals 1. Because, first of all we have there right now is 3. Because assuming that x is 1, which is what I'm going off of, that means that we have right now positive 3. Because negative 1 plus positive 4 equals 3. Because it's basically minusing 1.
Yeah.
And 2x plus 1 also equals 3. With the assumption that x equals 1, we could assert that x equals 1.
Okay, so we know the solution.
Yeah.
This is, do you remember at the beginning that I told you that some of them it's going to be easy to spot what the answer might be, but it's not always going to be the case, right? So we need to have a consistent approach. We need to eliminate. Now we've been trying to use those little blocks and things, so some of you have been having that. It does take a while to work it out. What you need to try and do is visualize that, if you can, to solve it on paper. So we've got a negative x and 4 on one side balances 2x's plus 1 on the other. So remember, if we're eliminating things, we're getting rid of them. All right? What would you get rid of first?
Negative x.
Get rid of the negative x. Why did you choose that?
Because
I would as well, but why negative x?
negative x, you have 2x on the other side, and you just want to get rid of the first x.
Well, I go with you've got 2 x's here and you've got negative x. That's a good reason. You've got x's on both sides. You don't want x's on both sides.
So you take away negative.
I don't like your second reason, but I would go with I would get rid of the negative x rather than the positive 2x, because you want to end up with positives, don't you? You want a positive x. You don't have to, but you want to. Right? So yes, we can get rid of. So we identify the negative x as something to get rid of. How do we get rid of it?
Minus.
No,
negative.
we plus x. Okay? Or elimination kind of means subtraction, doesn't it? Right? So if we subtract a negative x, you know from the board over there that subtracting a negative is the same as adding positive, right? So we can just add x. We add x, it gets rid of that one, and I'm left with just 4. What on the other side?
You add 1x.
We add an x, so we get 3 x's
Plus 1.
plus 1. Still balanced.
If you wanted to take an extra step, I guess you could get rid of that extra 1.
I mean, it's not about wanted. I mean, yes, we will do that, won't we? So this is my x's, but I've got things with my x, so I've got plus 1 here. So Rory's just said we should probably deal with that. Yeah. So we subtract a 1. We subtract it from both sides, and we get 3. And then we. Yeah, so this 3 needs to be divided by the 3 x's. So if we divide by 3, we get that 1x must equal 1.
I did it differently.
No, you didn't. You might have done it in a different order, but you didn't do it differently.
I didn't.
Remember we talked about this at the beginning.
I did it
You
really
probably did it in a different order. If you ended up with the same answer, you didn't do it differently. You might have done the same process but in a different order. What did you do first?
I didn't subtract. I didn't add an x. I subtracted 1.
So you did that first.
Yeah.
So you didn't do it differently, you just did it in a different
Well,
order.
I got a different answer.
Okay, well let's have a look. If you did it differently, well, in a different order, but you must have made a mistake. Because let's have a look. X plus 4, 2x plus 1. What did you do first? Subtract 1?
Yeah.
Okay, what did you get?
Negative x equals 2x.
But what back here? What's plus 4 minus 1? We should have plus 3.
I got plus 3.
Did you miss that? Or did you? Is that where the error was?
Yeah, I think.
So you can't just take away from one side. Remember, it's about balancing, isn't it, Holden?
If you took away from the one first, would it just like not matter?
No, yeah, it's just a different order. If we take the one away first, what would you do next?
You would take the x.
Yeah, I did
We
plus
would get.
X. Then I did plus X.
Then we do plus x, and we get 3 equals, gets the same point. I mean, even just to show you another order of doing things, which would be a bit messy, if I started with negative x plus 4 equals 2x. Now, some people will do this because they don't think about it efficiently enough, and they'll go, I'm going to subtract 2 x's. What does that give me?
Negative 2x plus 4.
Well, negative x, subtract another 2 x's is negative 3 x's. Negative 3 x's plus 4 is 1. They would then subtract the 4, and they get negative 3 x's equals negative 3. And if you divide by negative 3, you get 1x must be equal to 1. You get the same up.
I just.
And that's fine as well. Why do I avoid that way? It's because of the negative numbers.
Because it could be easier, I guess, in positive.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, the majority of mistakes come when people start dealing with negative numbers. Alright, it just messes things up for people. Yeah, sure, how happy are you with all those? Should we have, we've got to go through a few different types. So J, we've got this one.
I'm so confused on M.
M, okay, well we'll go through a few of those. Let's do, can you remember what it is? Remember again, 4x plus 2.
Yes, I have it.
You've got it written down. Okay. So what is it? 4x plus 2 equals
Negative 2 in brackets X minus 1.
I actually looked at it and I didn't finish that.
what do you want to start it? What would you do first?
So first thing is I would multiply 4 by x and 4 by 2.
Yeah. Do you remember what that's called? Doing?
Getting rid of like the brackets, expanding the brackets.
Expand the brackets. Good. So we're going to expand the brackets first on both sides. Alright, and we get
4x plus 3 equals negative 2x plus minus 2 plus 1. 2x
negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. Now, we don't have to do that to start with, but I'm happy enough with that. It's probably what I would do. Yeah, right?
2 things. One, I think you made a mistake because positive. Oh no, they were both negatives. Sorry. I'm just wondering, how do you expand the brackets again?
Well, what does 4,
Times it. Okay.
4x plus 2 is actually the same thing as saying x plus 2 plus another x plus 2 plus another x plus 2 plus another x plus 2. And that, if you remember, weeks ago was where we started when we collected like terms. And we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 x's and 1, 2, 3, 4 lots of 2, which is 8. Which we then went, oh, easier would be just to do 4 times x and 4 times 2. Yeah? Alright, next step, Julia? Julia wants to tell us.
The next step is that we have to cancel the negative term.
Go for it, what do I do then?
So on each side you plus by 2x.
So I'm going to add 2x to get rid of that. So that on that side would leave me with just the 2. And on here we've got to add 2x as well, which would leave me with 6x's plus x. Hang on, let's slow it down. Let me put,
Minus, actually minus each side by 8.
Yeah, so we've got the x's just on one side, so we've managed to eliminate x's from the right-hand side, which is good. But we've got things with the x's on the left-hand side, so let's subtract the 8 from both sides, and we get left with 6 x's on that side, and we've got 2 subtract 8 is actually -6. And if I've got -6 and I've got to share that between 6 x's, well, if we divide it by the 6, we get 1x must equal
Oh, sorry.
-1.
One extra step.
Again, there is no problem if you do things in different order, okay? As long as you get to the correct answer. This was J.
I was waiting for us to do M or something right now.
Should we do N?
Oh, no, I'm on that.
Let's do P.
Right, guys. Ladies and gents, let's do M. Y divided by 4 plus 7 equals 2. Y divided by 4, what was it?
Equals 2.
Is it plus 7 equals 2? Plus 7 equals 2.
Which one is this?
Well, that's why we're doing these examples now. So you've written them down and you've talked it through and you've got things to study for,
In our exam.
and then we can do a test on this soon.
I agree.
No, can we just do that? No, it's too
So
hard.
that gets
No,
gonna be
just remember what I said. None of that happens unless I see everyone in the room fully on it and fully focused. I will say to you all now, I am not seeing everyone in the room being fully focused. Yeah? You can look around as much as you like. I'm not going to identify. Okay. We've got y has been divided by 4. Then we add 7 and we get the answer 2. So we've got to eliminate. Now this one could be considered tricky because lots of people make mistakes with this type. What would we do first?
Times by 4 on left side and then times by 4.
Right, okay. Now, I am glad you said that. It wouldn't be my choice for what to do first, but I am perfectly happy with multiplying both sides by 4. Andrew, do you know why he wants to multiply by 4?
They multiply both by 4 because the answer is 2. What? No, never mind. I'll be right with the divide, so never mind.
Nate,
Is it because 7 can be times by 4?
it's not 0, the 7 can be.
Wait, oh,
I'm glad you said that because that means I'm going to ask you the next question. Why did he say let's times it by 4? Andrew?
Maybe because he's trying to figure out what y is
And what has happened to y at the moment?
just any number.
It's been divided by 4. Okay. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they do these things. Timesing by 4 is a perfectly feasible and reasonable and correct thing to do, but how do we do it correctly?
Times everything by
What
4.
is this? What is it?
So first you go to the right, just to the right. So you write, okay, yeah, that works. So 4 times, and then you write times 2 by 4 too.
Okay, so I've multiplied, and what is on this side then?
So right now that would be 8,
What's on this side?
and there would just be y, and then do we times 7 by 4? I think so, right? I'm gonna go with yes.
divide.
So that would be 28.
Good. Alright. So, I think as Nate mentioned, as Andrew mentioned, as Rory figured out, when you multiply, you have to multiply everything that's there. Not just one bit of it, if you want 4 lots of it, you've got to have 4 lots of everything. So, we multiplied by 4, and y divided by 4 times 4 is indeed 1. But 4 lots of plus 7 is also plus 28. Now, normally, which maybe that just shows how good you guys have been at learning this stuff, you didn't give me that as your first answer. You went straight with, hang on, I think you know. And you're right. It must be y plus 28. Right? And we did the same to the other side. So make a special note of that. It's not y plus 7 equals 8. Not that, okay? Right? Because must times by 4 also. Now, just to say why I wouldn't have done it like this, I'm very glad Rory did it this way so we could discuss that. I would have subtracted 7 first, and then it's not an issue. Alright? But if we'd have done it that way, then if ever anyone decided to do it this way, we wouldn't have done it as an example. So it's good. What do we do at this next stage then?
Minus 28.
Minus the 28. And we get 1y must equal
20. Negative 20.
negative 20. Is that happy with that one, Bundy? Did it make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
kind of.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit confused.
What are you confused with?
How do you know y is 20? I mean, just going up through all that, but like, how do you
Because
start?
do you remember when I first started, I said to you, y is a number, right? We figured it out in the end. But let's say I don't know what it is. What I do know is after I've done some stuff to it, I know what it becomes. Yeah? So I know that if I divide the number by 4 and then add 7, I get the answer 2. So what I can do is I can unbuild it. Do you remember I said equations are like building onto the letter? You can unbuild it to figure out where I must have started. So, what Rory said was, well, we've got y divided by 4 plus 7 is 2. Well, if we multiply it by 4, that means I haven't done the divide by 4 yet. But if I multiply it by 4, the answer has got to be multiplied by 4. So that's why I've got the 8. Now, just to show you the other way of doing this, by the way, whether it makes more sense, I don't know. So y divided by 4 plus 7 equals 2. What I would have done is, because I know that division causes some problems, I would have subtracted 7, and I would have got... Now, what does this say, girls? Well, this says, the number divided by 4, then you add 7 equals 2. This line says, well, before I added the 7, that number divided by 4 must have been negative 5. Because that's the only number that when you add 7 to, you get 2, right? So it must have been. Yeah. And what divided by 4 is negative 5? Well, what must it have been before I divided by 4? Well, how do you figure out what it was before you divide by 4? You times it by 4, and you get y must equal negative 20. We get the same answer, right? Now, for me, I think that's a little bit easier than the way we did it, but both ways are equally fine. Yeah. All right.
So,
Yeah.
And there's less steps too.
Slightly, yeah.
I still.
You did that.
Oh, so like the times 4 kind of like cancels out the divided by 4,
Yes.
like if it was like minus 4 and plus 4.
Yes, exactly that. So the things you know is divide, multiply, cancels out, divide, and vice versa, yeah? Addition cancels out, subtraction. Yeah? Everything in maths has an inverse that can undo it. If I've added 5 to something, how do I undo adding 5?
Subtract.
I subtract 5. Yeah. So, is there any other one of these questions you would like to look at? Should we have a look at which one? P?
Yeah, can we repeat?
Can you write it down so that you can read it to me afterwards?
Okay, sure.
Oh, it's a good one. I was going to say O, but it's got negatives. So P I think is slightly easier than O. Depends what the answer is.
I have it. I have it down.
You have it down?
Oh.
No, I'm going to write it. I don't need to wait for you. You've been chatting. Go on, tell me.
3D.
3Ds. Divide by
4
4
plus 4
plus 4
equals
equals
D
D
plus 2.
plus 2. Okay. Alright. Same thing. There's nothing new. We just have to be very careful that we do things in the correct order. What would you like to do first? Holden, what would you do?
For 3D plus 2.
Can I,
First, I would do 3D divided by 4.
no, can I say?
I can't do that, that's done. What
Okay.
I need to unbuild it.
Okay.
What do I take away first?
Take away.
I'm asking for Holden, like, there's lots of options, I'm asking for Holden, because just to make sure he's with us.
Take away the 4.
Take away the 4. I can. Would anyone else have chosen that first?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's do it then.
What if you took away 2?
What if you took away the 2? That's a good question, because at this point it's quite nice to go, well, why did you do that? Why did you? So I know from experience that I would actually be going with the, I would subtract, just because I can see what's going to happen. Because I can think, like playing chess, I can think a few steps ahead, right? I know that I'm going to end up having to multiply all that by 4, right? And I'm going to have to do the same, so I'm going to have more D's on that side, so I want to take D's off this side and leave them on that side, which means I need to take numbers from this side and so. But let's have a look. Holden said subtract 4. So let's do that. Alright?
Sorry, I didn't.
What does it become?
3D divided by 4 equals D plus 2.
D minus 2.
Oh, yeah.
D minus.
Yeah, I know you have minus 2. Because subtract 2.
Subtracting 4.
Yeah.
Yep. Now what?
Yeah,
Now
take,
times by 4.
may you take away D?
Right. So, Paige said multiply by 4, which is exactly what I would do. Andrew said take away D, which actually is perfectly reasonable to do, but is harder. Why? Well, I'm going to ask you, Andrew, do you know, did I call you Daniel?
Yes.
Yeah, why was it Andrew, why, what do you get if you subtract D?
You get 2D divided by 4 equals minus 2.
No, you don't.
Oh yeah, you can do this. They did the division
Right,
also.
so he's, girls, this is an important one as well. This is, Andrew said, let's subtract the D. And what he did was he went, oh, well, I've got 3 Ds there, so if I subtract a D, I get 2 Ds. Unfortunately, this isn't 3 Ds. It's 3 Ds that have been divided by 4. So you can't just do that separate. Now, one way to think about it is, this is actually 3/4 of a D. If you think about it, times by 3 and then divide by 4, I've only got 3/4 of a D. You see that?
Okay, okay.
3/4 of a D. So if I subtract 1D
You just take away the entire.
from
You take away all the.
3/4, I actually end up with negative 1/4, which is a bit trickier, right, to get your head around. So I would actually do what Paige suggested, which is let's deal with the division bit first. So what did she suggest to do? Times by 4. So if we times it by 4, so I'm going to times, but now I'm going to put my brackets in because of this side. Because it's times by 4, right? What does this side become? Times by 4, divide by 4, so it becomes 3Ds. What's on the other side? All of this, but 4 times. What do I end up with?
D minus.
4Ds.
Oh, 40 minus.
And subtract 8.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you have it
Really
wrong.
took off.
Because now we have more D's on the right side. than
Yes.
there is too. So either you add 8 and then subtract 4 D's, or we could minus 4 D's and end up with negative.
Bless you.
Yeah, you could go either way.
Yeah.
And remember, that's not even.
Now, Rory just made the point for those that didn't quite hear it. We were hoping by subtracting the 4 on the left-hand side that we were going to leave everything on the left-hand side because we've got lots of D's here and only one of them. But actually, now we think of it, we've actually got more D's on this side, haven't we? So we probably should have done what Paige suggested at the beginning, which was subtract 2 instead. But it doesn't matter, we get to the same point. What do we do next?
Subtract 3.
Subtract, well,
3D.
what, okay. I'm glad, let's do this, because this leads to another issue. If I subtract 3Ds,
You get nothing on the left hand
what's
side.
this, what's this? 1D
Minus 8.
minus 8,
And
and
then
what,
there's nothing.
so what do we do?
You add a 0, and then you
Ah,
have to
okay.
add 8.
Now, this is important.
Oh.
Okay? Is this the thing I was saying about not paying full attention?
8. Sorry, I was. 8 equals P.
Now, this is a point at which there are mistakes because this is what happens. People do this, right? So I'm hoping you're going to go, well, that doesn't make sense. And I think you will. What people do is, I've got rid of, so what have I also got rid of? Holden, they also say, I get rid of the equals, I'm just left with that. Because it doesn't equal anything, so you can't have an equals.
That makes no sense.
Well, it doesn't, does it? Because we have to have a balancing side, right?
Oh, we just discovered.
So we have to have an equals, and what does go there? Do we have a number for 0?
No.
No, it's 0 is just a placeholder.
Do we have a number
Yes.
for 0? Yes, we have
Zero.
a 0. Yeah? So we actually have to put the 0. We don't get rid of the equal, and the only reason I say that, Sadie, is because lots of people in the past have done exactly what I just said. They just get rid of the equal sign and then get confused because suddenly there's no equal sign anymore and they're so used to having that. Right? Let's not worry about what we should have done. What do we do now?
Plus 8.
Plus 8 to both sides. And we get 8 equals D. Now, yeah, we could have done it in a different order completely, but we've got to the right answer, right? Yeah. We could have done what we did with the other one, which is times by 4 first, and then we'd have had plus 16, and so it could have been a different question. There's lots of different ways to do this. All right. So they're quite tricky ones. I bet you if I gave those to my M3s this afternoon, I tell you what, I'll do that. I'll give these to my M3s and I'll see how well they do and I'll let you know. No, you're not. They're very,
Yeah.
very good. They're very good, but like I said, I want you to appreciate, I'm not telling you these are easy. These are quite challenging. That's why you have to fully focus and not be doodling pictures of, I don't know what you doodle, or mess around with each other's hands or that kind of thing. Page. If you're going to do that while I'm talking about not doing it,
She was giving you an example of what not to do.
it's with the other person that's given me lots of examples of what not to do. So let me ask you this then. I'm going to get you to do the question that's very close to P, which is O. And can you do that yourself? Alright? 2 t's divided by 7, subtract 10 equals negative 2 t's plus 4. Try and come up with the most efficient way of doing it. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Well done. Nate is the first boy who's head down and he's writing it and getting on with it. The rest of the boys are not.
I was thinking.
Right. Okay, because it's almost lunchtime, the next step, I'm perfectly happy with Nate's first couple of steps. What would we do next? What do we do next?
Subtract 2t.
We could. I'm not going to do that.
No, so
Because I've got negative 14t and I've got positive 2,
Subtract.
so I don't want negative t. So actually my first step would be to add 14 t's to both sides, giving me 16 t's on that side and only 98 on that side.
British.
Stop using my Ow! Sorry.
We are recording, just in case I need to.
No, I finished. Can you go up?
Well, that's just the question.
I've written it. I didn't invite her.
Alright, what do we do to finish this off, ladies? Charlotte?
Do you have to figure out what
Yeah, well, that was right from the beginning. But I know that 16 t's is 98, so I have to do 1 t must be 98 that has been divided into 16 pieces.
We did that, right?
Yeah, we did.
We didn't have the last step, but we had the top step.
Yeah, we had.
Now, I think the problem is coming because people are going, oh, if I do that on my calculator, I get a decimal answer, right?
Yeah. But you get 9, but you have to like
Wait, can I?
Now, how about, guys, if you stop talking, how about we simplify the fraction instead of relying on our calculator? So we've got 98 divided by 16. Do you remember how to simplify? Let's try dividing by 2. That gives me 49 over 8. And actually, that's as simplified as it can go. Now, if we wanted to, how many 8s can I take out of 49? A line.
Yeah.
6. So I could take 6 whole ones out, and 6 8s are
6, 8, or 40.
48.
Yeah.
6 8s is 48.
But you have one
Yeah.
And we have 1
Yeah.
8th remainder. And that is an answer for t as well as having decimal. Did you write that down, Holden?
Wait, I'm looking. Okay.
Wait, so it's twice. So it doesn't go along with what I was just about to say, which was like the calculator kind of like tries to simplify it, but into
Well, what did we
decimal
get as a decimal? The decimal would have been 6 point.
6 point. Yeah.
What's 1 8?
Wait, what am I saying?
6.18.
Bondi, what did your calculator
1
say
point.
when you did 98 divided by 16?
I gotta do it again.
6.1.8.
It says 6.125.
Okay. Now, can I just ask you to do... Right, so I'm going to just pause for a moment. When everyone's paying attention, then I'll carry on. Then when I've done what I need to do with you, then I'll talk about going for lunch. Some of you have just stopped, even though this is an important bit. This is something we've done, and you should be able to use at this stage. So 98 divided by 16 is 6.125. We simplified our fractions and got 6 and 1/8. On your calculator, if you do 1 divided by 8, what do you get? 0.125. So the 6 bit is the same, 1/8 is the 0.125. So we have now this answer,
But it just makes
is
it-
that allowed to be an answer in an algebraic equation?
No, is it art? It can, but it makes it, does it make it more like?
So, this is an example. Yes, of course it can be a possible answer. There is no problem being a decimal. But this does lead us to the example that I said earlier. When there is no way you are going to be able to look at that equation and going, I think that's 6.125 because it just happens to fit, right? We're not going to ever be able, I can't do that. Some people might be able to, the geniuses, but I would have to work this out. You must have this method. Now, why do I want to keep hold of you for a second? Because I think this week, if Miss Galvez is here on Wednesday, we'll have a bit of a review for this, you can carry on practicing. But Thursday, I'm going to do a test. I'm going to give you some of these equations. Okay? It's not going to be for criterion. It's going to be a quiz out of however many I give you to check on how good you are at solving some of these equations. All of the questions will come from here. No good memorising the answers because I would want to see all the steps of how you get to it. That will be the quiz. Got it? Good.